search products. Sounds like you got really sophisticated over there.
I've got a bunch of folks coming.
Somebody is, not us particularly, but
Well,
yeah,
my
their
husband's
team is
family's
really,
from
really great
California.
with that stuff.
It's amazing how quickly you can start gathering data and analyzing stuff. That's really the way in the future. I noticed that your working with worksheets are
And then I've got family
loaded up there, so
Yeah.
that's gotta help you a lot.
It's gonna be wild.
Yeah, like,
It'll be great.
yeah,
It'll be
especially
great,
like
but
public
it'll be
tax
very
and like sales
intense. I'm
stuff,
really,
tax stuff, it's all so easy to just,
I gotta stop it.
all the, like, all the state distribution reports are already there, we just have to type in the entity and
We're
be
not
like,
ready.
the one piece
Let
of
alone people
takes
watch
all smart for
hours.
us.
Oh, yeah, oh, no, it's
You
big
know
cost.
beforehand if we're a penny off.
But still, when I have those big things, it's like, well, you just, yes, and I always end up having way too much. That's better than,
Yeah.
oh, I wish I would have, you know.
Right, yeah. Well, I gotta, you know, my dad likes a certain juice in the morning.
Yep,
The good stuff.
yeah.
You get to kind of dote on them while you
Do
can.
you guys put in a lot of
Well, I'm gonna
overtime?
hit, I'm gonna take Tuesday and Wednesday off.
It depends, but I
I'm
would
getting down to
say,
Bend tomorrow,
we-
with Aaron and
for the
Ann.
most part, you've
Yeah,
never
like
worked more than like
kids,
50
yeah.
hours a week plus
Tuesday
travel.
for the weekend. Yeah, well, I'm trying to miss
Or
the
plus
busiest
Plus
days,
travel,
so I'm
but
going
like
tomorrow.
normally we work
and
40 hours a
Saturday.
week.
Oh, yeah.
Because
Sunday,
it's hitting the
Sunday.
deadline or.
I'm gonna fly.
Oh, good.
So if you can't meet a
It's
deadline,
really
You fly out of
expensive.
CTAC?
then it's overtime. You meet the
Yeah,
deadline or
it's
you just
really-
push it out.
I guess it depends on what the deadline is, but
Yeah.
we try to work extra.
It is.
So we have deadlines
Well, this
throughout
time
the
of
whole
year,
year,
so
so
it's
it's
like
like
a
a
8-hour drive if you drive straight.
I think I read over.
That's 10 hours.
I can't get enough paper.
No, you can't.
And then in 2 days.
like 40 hours.
So
Yeah.
it seemed like
But it's,
you
you know,
spent a few less.
Stay there. That's okay.
It's okay, you know, I've got,
Yeah, but they're not in New York.
So was that, would you say that was
really
like, you're able to get your data quicker or were you just more efficient yourselves?
I think both, just that, you know, like there are a couple years with like,
Oh, yeah.
you and Mike and, you know, quickness of getting information, knowing that we can rely on that stuff, so if we do some stuff off-site, that's how.
Oh, yes, I did.
Here and work through a lot. If you have less issues, you can be on-site with less, because you
Hey,
don't
Matt,
have to
where do you
discuss
come
those
from?
I
less.
read it too late.
Where do you live?
Edmonds.
Oh, no,
Where you live?
yeah, well, I was.
So next year, I think we're gonna have to.
From Stanwood. Welcome to you. That one.
Oh, you went down, is it faster for you to come
Is there any
down the mountain too?
additional things that we should?
You know, I debated whether I should drive
Either
around
pay attention to
or
and make
take the
that.
ferry.
Yeah, my time wasn't bad.
Maybe, well.
Boy, there was a lot of standing water everywhere.
Oh, no.
Yeah.
But I find one of
Oh, you're right, yeah.
Heading south,
It sounded like that was just listening to the radio.
I mean, there's no ice, there's no snow.
Purchases, most of
It's
your
rain.
And a little curve in the road. I'm averaging like 10 miles an hour, you know, but I left an hour early, so I couldn't relax.
Yeah, I could.
My only.
I gave myself an extra 50 minutes this morning too, just in case.
Yeah, exactly.
It's just,
There's a cost to,
Just make sure that our procedures answer your questions.
Yes.
Have all documents.
Yeah, like,
place
isn't
where,
like.
and I think that would be
So it's
what.
probably some years ago, like making sure inventories are like in place for safety purchases. Federal funds, all the tracking of that is all done right.
I'm just a little unclear about that.
that place, you know, like that.
All the
Then it was
all the
unclear
fun
about
things, right?
I mean, what you said a list for the auditors.
Morning.
The send it.
Morning, how are you doing?
Oh, what you said?
You say the end?
Oh, yeah, I did. I was getting that close.
She said to my nice, and she said, that's me. So,
Yeah, I was
yeah, I'm
on
gonna
it, I
follow
was on
up
the
with,
verge
I'll
there,
just
because it was gonna take
follow
forever
up.
to
No,
get
no,
home.
I'm thinking about it. I guess we could not. I'm thinking of sending it.
2 weekends in a row.
Oh, yeah. No, I think.
It didn't look good.
I mean, I would be. Good morning, how are you?
I'm just gonna tell you up front.
You're sick?
No, I'm not
No.
sick. But I'll wave the hip along right now, doing a skill treatment. And so, I've been at the same position, so I look like a off. And no, I didn't get punched in the nose.
Okay, all right. Just keep our heads up, just glad you're okay. Yeah.
Well, it is slightly past 9:30. Rick Hanold is ill today,
Oh, I'm sorry to hear that.
and, okay, and what did you give this to you, sir?
The auditors are requesting that everyone sign it.
It's for the other.
It's for the audit. For
You make it.
EMC responsibility.
Thanks for the nice pen.
You were present at the previous meeting, so those were part of the, all the operators. I would do
And I don't have a cold, my voice is a little raspy, and that's from the Husky game Saturday. So if you're a Ute fan, I'm sorry for you.
What an ending to that game.
It was quite a deal, and I took my nephew to that, who is also, he goes to the University of Utah. And he had to sit right there with me wearing a red leather jacket. Take every minute.
I see the husband do it.
The dogs did it at the last minute. Okay, we'll call this meeting to order, and if you join me in the pledge of allegiance. I pledge allegiance
Allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. We have guests here today, and this is representatives from Washington State Auditor's Office. Good to see you again. I think we see Oak Harbor from time to time too, familiar faces. So we're going to go with that, the introduction of our guest, and then we'll go on to the approval of the agenda after we do the presentation, and then we'll allow you to say this one session. And would you introduce yourself and proceed at your will?
So we're with the Washington State Auditor's Office. We should have a packet in front of you. This is just what we're going to go over today. And on the left side of the packet, we have our contact information. So at the bottom, you'll see Julie Sternas. This is Julie. She was the audit lead. And then right above that is myself. I'm Kelly Tonkin, the assistant audit manager. I was the supervisor of the audit. We also have kind of going up our acting audit manager and then some of the individuals in Olympia, but mostly the people at the bottom are who you saw in your audit. So just want to thank you for having us today just to go over the results of our audit. So first thing, just want to go over some audit highlights. Just really want to thank Paul and the rest of the staff for their cooperation and timely response to everything we requested. It really helps with a smooth audit and getting all the information we need. So thank you for that. And then I'll let Julie kind of walk you through the audit reports.
So if you go to the Accountability Audit Report tab, the results of the audit are on page 4. Determined it was in compliance with state laws, regulations, and their own policies. The areas that we looked at are listed at the bottom of the page. For state grants, we reviewed several state grants. We determined expenditures were allowable and services were provided. For procurement, we reviewed several contracts. like route match software and Trimax construction. We found that procurement methods were allowable. And then for small and attractive assets, we reviewed the policy. We also tested some small attractive assets. We did have some minor recommendations to management, just housekeeping items. We also tested golf carts and PRIUSES, and there were no issues. The next page touches on a financial report, which I'll be covering. Page 6 is information on the transit, and the next page is information on our office. And the next report is the financial report. Starting on page 4 is report on internal control over financial reporting. On page 5, you'll see we've highlighted text to bring your attention that during the audit, we did not identify any deficiencies in internal controls that we consider to be material weaknesses. Also, there were no instances of non-compliance. And then the next page is the report on the financial statements. Page 7, we've highlighted the opinion. We did issue a clean or an unmodified opinion. And on page 9, the financial section, this is a list of the financial statements that are included in the published report. We haven't included them here, but they are included in the published report. Are there any questions before we continue?
Any questions from the board?
Great. So I'll bring you back to kind of the main agenda page, and on the back side of that first piece of paper. So just some required communications regarding our financial statement audit. We are required to communicate to you that there were no material misstatements in the financial statements that were corrected, and there were no uncorrected misstatements. So again, that just reiterates what Julie went over in those reports, is that we're giving a clean opinion on the transit's financial statements. Recommendations we issued, we did provide management with exit recommendations. These are housekeeping, kind of best practices and things for management to consider. We went over those with management and didn't feel the need to share them with you, but you can always discuss them further with management. We also have here a link to where you can find this audit report. A lot of times we come to exit conferences with draft reports, but our audit ended over a month ago, so we didn't want to wait to publish the report. So these are the final reports, and you can see them on our website through that link. You can also look at other entities' audit reports as well if you're interested. We also provide an audit survey to Paul, but that can be passed along to anyone who's interested or anyone we specifically worked with at the transit. We love to get feedback and know how we can make the audit work better for the transit and provide more benefit to the transit. At the beginning of our audit, we estimated costs at about $21,000 plus travel, and we're at approximately that amount. And our next scheduled audit will be conducted in 2018. It'll cover accountability, financial statement, and a federal program. And that's why you can see the audit cost has increased for next audit, just to cover that federal compliance audit. So overall, we have 2 clean reports, and hopefully that's what these additional documents will show you. Do you have any questions over any of the items we covered, or your upcoming audit, or?
Well,
Any from the board?
I don't have a question, just a statement. So actually, our financial manager, Paul, gets an A+, and those that work with him get an A+?
Yes.
So we're very fortunate, aren't we?
Yes, you are.
Thank you, Paul.
Well, it's everybody really though too. They worked with every department head, and everyone did a great job supporting me, so transfer the information to the auditors. So I
Good
appreciate
job,
everybody's help.
everybody.
Good
Yeah.
job.
Congratulations.
Excuse me.
And as well, I'll offer comment, for Kelly and Julie, certainly appreciate the time. You spend a significant amount of time here and working on the audit, kind of as expected. But, I welcome the audit each year because we find out something new, something that we can improve upon. And, you talked about the exit items and the recommendations for the small and attractive items. And, that was helpful. It gives us an opportunity to look at those and, improve our descriptions, et cetera, and administrative processes. So, I look forward to the audit next year. And as they did indicate, it will be a larger audit next year largely because our federal grants this year will exceed the threshold that they have in the past. So that expands the size and scope of the audit a little bit, and that's what she's referring to, the cost of the audit will also increase.
Thank you. Any other comments, questions?
Thank you.
Julie, Kelly, thank you very much.
Thank you for having us.
Have a happy Thanksgiving and safe travels.
Drive carefully out there.
Did you ride the bus here or did you drive?
We did that.
Thank you, Kelly.
Next item on our agenda is the approval of the agenda.
I'll move to approve the agenda. Second.
Motion by,
Sir, did you want to modify the agenda for Commissioner Hamel to allow him to call in for?
yes, we have a motion, we have a second. We won't take a vote at this particular
Does
time.
that take a modification of the agenda?
Yes. When we were talking about this earlier, when I say we, Mike and I were talking about the order of this thing, Rick Hanold is ill today. And Bruce Allen is out also.
We expected him. I'm not sure where he is.
So, but anyway, I would recommend that we go with the order on our business items. Item number 1 would become item number 2. Business item number 2 would become number 3. And business item number 3 would become number 1. And the final one would be 4. And that allows us to get Rick Hanold into, get him on the telephone and not tie him up. He's home ill, but he wanted to be involved in.
With the budget, you want to be involved with the budget discussion? Or
He wanted to be involved, well, in the order of, number 1 becomes 2.
Well, hold on, sir. I think you're looking at, we already modified the agenda, so the numbers that you're looking at are, I would recommend you refer to the topic.
Okay. First item would be discussion of assessment of fair policy.
Oh,
Okay.
Oh,
new one here.
Yeah, you gotta do one. We're all looking at the old. Okay. The second item would be,
Same one here. Never mind.
so you want fair policy to be number 1?
yeah, fair policy number 1. Number 2 is discussion with possible action, resolution 13-17 regarding the 2018 annual budget.
Okay.
Number 3 would be discussion with possible action regarding the service expansion, also known as Saturday service. And then number 4 is discussion with possible action, adoption of resolution 14-17 regarding weapons on island transit property halls.
And then before the business items, we'll try and give Commissioner Hamel a call so he can be present.
Yes.
So I will move to approve the agenda as amended. You ready for that?
Sure.
Okay.
Second.
All right, we have a new motion and a second to amend the agenda. I'm not going to repeat the numbers, you got that. And any further discussion?
And to allow Commissioner Handel to participate.
Participate on the phone, exactly. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? And that carries unanimously. So, next item will be the approval of the consent agenda.
I'll move to approve the consent agenda.
I'll second it.
We have a motion and a second to approve the consent agenda as presented. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
And any opposed? None, obviously. So that carries unanimously also. Took care of the exit conference with the auditors. And we have a public hearing regarding the public hearing to receive the input on the 2018 transit budget. The public hearing is now over.
Sir, I'll start with the discussion of the 2018 budget. Similar to last month, as we discussed it, we've made some additional changes to some additional modifications to the budget. One of those principally is we previously had some of the licenses and fees under the operations department. As we looked at monitoring that and understanding that, we haven't changed that, but we moved it from, we moved that license and fees into the administration budget. So again, no change in the net amount. However, what we did do was move it out of operations and into administration, which is where the IT department monitors some of those license and fees. So there's a substantial change in that when you look at some of the departments. Overall in the budget, not as much. Okay, assumptions for the budget. Service, it does include service expansion to include Saturday service. Actual service introduction will depend on staffing and training progress. To date, we do have operators that we've hired for Saturday service, and training is progressing as expected. Saturday service is projected to add an additional 8% in service hours to the budget. Staffing will grow to include additional personnel. That includes 4 would-be operators, 1 Camino operator, 1 would-be dispatcher, a would-be facilities technician, part-time would-be maintenance, and part-time Camino facilities technician. Fuel consumption is budgeted based on historical usage plus service expansions for Saturday. Fuel cost is budgeted similarly as we have in the past for $3.50 a gallon on would-be, $4 a gallon on Camino. That does give us a little bit of a buffer as it has in the past to accommodate for changes in unexpected changes in fuel prices. Represented wage increase is 2% in accordance with the collective bargaining agreement. Non-represented wage increase is 2% cost of living adjustment as well. We have discussed in the past $850,000 from the 2017 sales tax revenue is assumed to be the result from construction-related activities in Island County. We determined that amount based on help from the Department of Revenue and Economic Development Council in being able to detail the sources of sales tax revenue. And in doing so, we removed that from future projections for sales tax. So if you were to, and you'll see a little bit in the budget, I'll talk a little bit more later, you'll see it looks like a reduction in sales tax revenue for next year, and that reflects that we have removed that $850,000 and then forecasted for the growth of sales tax on the base amount, not on the amount to include the $850,000. Sales tax is forecasted to grow 5% in 2017 revenues, with the exclusion of what I just talked about. That reflects a historical average of about 48% in the state economy. Medical benefits will increase 2%. That's a little bit of change from last month. We had planned forecast at 5%. We have just confirmed with our medical benefit provider that it will only be 2%. So that was good news for medical benefits for us. The public employee retirement system contribution rate remains the same. And then vehicle reserve amounts are established based on utilization to set aside reserves each year commensurate with the anticipated replacement schedule. For fiscal impact, the proposed 2018 budget is balanced and includes transfers and operating capital reserves. A couple of other discussion items. Our local sales tax is 0.09% collected for Island Transit, provides the majority of our operating revenues, and that's projected to grow 5% as we've already talked about. Additionally, Island Transit receives grant funding from Washington State Department of Transportation through 3 operating grants, a special needs operating grant supporting parent transit operations, county connector operating grant supporting routes 411 and 412, the sales tax equalization grant supporting general operations. Operational revenues are forecast to remain flat with a very small decrease to $13,872,055. That's a result of the decreased sales tax and van pool revenues. Additional sources of revenue come through grant funding for capital projects and staffing support. Operating expenses increased to $12,323,993. That's an increase of 8.4% over last year's budget. That includes transfers to operating reserves of about $100,000. Most significant expense category is wages and benefits, with resultant increase as a result of expansion of Saturday service. And Saturday service will result in, like I said, about an 8% increase in total operating hours. Notable expenses or changes from the 2017 budget include $5,225,447 for salaries and wages in 2018. It is $566,066 higher than the 2017 budget, and that compensates for additional labor and the 2% increase in wages. I talked about medical benefits. They increased by 2%. Dental benefits will remain flat for next year. Insurance costs, a result of vehicle mileage exposure, are anticipated to increase with the expansion of Saturday service to $455,000. That's about an 8% increase as well over last year. And with the, just another minor note is with the introduction of new vehicles, operations will also see a minor increase in the use of diesel exhaust fluid, which is used to offset emissions, and it's a maintenance requirement for new vehicles, newer diesel emissions. $70,000 was identified to assist in replacement of the restroom facilities at Flintstone Park with the City of Oak Harbor. In addition, Island Transit and the City of Oak Harbor will amend their agreement to remove the Island Transit restroom facilities maintenance responsibilities in the future. Transfers to reserves for 2018 include $405,684 for future bus purchases. Again, this number is based on an average bus utilization to maintain vehicles in a state of good repair. $98,138 for future van pool purchases, based on average van pool utilization. $73,970 for future support vehicles used by maintenance and operations, such as shuttle vehicles, maintenance vehicles for road calls, etc. $905,230 to capital reserves for future building repairs and future capital projects, such as park and rides, transit centers, etc. Again, these are amounts set to reserve, not set for expenses in 2018, but set to reserve. Staff recommends approval of the 2018 Island Transit budget. The budget may be approved by resolution either today at the board meeting today or next month's board meeting on December 11th. Pending questions?
Before we take any questions from the board, we'll open it to the public for comment. And at this time, the public has an opportunity to comment on the proposed 2018 budget. And I see Gail back there. Gail usually has a comment. Gail, you have 3 minutes to make your comments before we move on.
Thank you. First of all, congratulations on a good audit. That was pretty nice. For the budget, I do appreciate the, I know a lot of people that will appreciate Saturday service. That's been a huge thing for years.
Recognize we haven't instituted Saturday service at this time.
Exactly, but it's in work, right? We're getting there. One of the things, though, on a more troublesome note, is the millions that we've spent on Route Match, and the fact that Route Match is not working as advertised. It fails to work quite a bit. The radios are still horrific. I ride the bus. I've heard comments that they work, that both Route Match and the radios work fantastic on the south end. Well, I ride the bus down there because I want to check things out, and it's not working so good down there either. So I'm not sure whose word we're relying on that these systems work, but millions of dollars have gone into a program that I believe work in other places. But for some reason, we're not doing things with our real-time GPS, to be able to know where things are at. The other thing on that, with the golf carts and the small attractive asset list, it's nice to know that we brought the other 3 golf carts back for the auditors to do an in-person and eyes-on view of all 5 assets. But I'm also looking if, I don't see anything on here where we're doing a surplus. Because according to the auditor's office, you planned on surplusing 3 golf carts in October. And so I'm just wondering, has that happened yet, or did we just drive them back down to the south end, or, what are we doing with that? I'd like an answer back on that one at the very least. Thank you.
Thank you, Gail. It's not necessary to respond to any of the public questions, but if anybody on the staff or the board would like to respond to any questions they may at this time.
The only part I'll comment on is the surplus or auction. We are planning one. We have not surplus or auctioned anything yet, so that is still a planning factor. We're probably looking at two separate actions, one for equipment and vehicles that we have now, and then one in the future as we receive more costs.
Thank you, Mike.
Any other questions or comments before we move on? And hearing none, we'll close the public hearing for public comment on this topic, and we'll take questions from the board. And if there are no questions, what does the board want to do? Is there a motion adopting resolution 1317?
Close the hearing.
Yeah.
I thought I just closed it. Okay. Public hearing is closed.
And then you have this on the business item later on here, so.
You do, so.
Okay, great.
You want to call the commissioner?
Yes.
Ron, do you want to come down?
I don't have his phone number here, so.
Hi Rick, it's Island Transit.
Hello there.
You are on speakerphone.
Okay.
Good morning, Rick. This is the other Rick.
Hi, other Rick. How are you today?
I'm doing well.
Sorry I couldn't make it, but I'm a bit under the weather here.
Well, we modified our agenda so that we can include you and then allow you to get off the telephone to move on. And are moving forward on our agenda. We have moved the agenda items in this order. If you want to, do you happen to have a copy of the posted agenda?
I didn't print it, but I looked at it when I was at convention last week. I was keeping up with that.
Okay.
That helped with me. I was reading through stuff in the evening, so.
Well, we modified the order of the business items. And business item number 3, discussion and assessment of fair policy, is the first item. That's the one that we're going to right now. And Mr. Nortier will start the presentation, and then we'll include you in the discussion and get your input also.
Okay.
All right, so for the board, go to the next slide.
Rick, can you hear, let us know if you can hear
Yeah,
Mr. Nortier over
really
there.
actually quite well, as a matter of fact.
Thank you.
All right, well, bear with us a second. We're having some technical difficulties. Okay, so again, in discussion of fair policy, background or factors to consider. This is an annual requirement in accordance with actually Resolution 788. So it's been a long-standing requirement and usually to occur with the budget review process. Island Transit is one of 2 state agencies that operates in a fare-free system. There is one other service or one other transit agency in the state of Washington that operates. We do charge obviously on the 412 route. Similarly, the other agency that operates fare-free also charges for out-of-county connections. We've seen in the past, again, no interpretations or opinions here, just state representations have expressed some reluctance in providing additional assistance without local efforts. We've seen some discussion, particularly with the Route 412 appropriation from 2015 to 17. There was a direct legislative appropriation that required fare box recovery to release that funding for Island Transit. In looking to the future, how do we sustain or increase revenues to support services? Again, not necessarily tied to fares, but just a discussion. As we've mentioned a little bit with the budget, Island Transit sales tax revenue will continue to grow at historical rates of about 5 to 8%, in a steady state economy. That does not reflect recessions, obviously, or changes in economic forecasts. Island County transit sales tax is the maximum allowed by law right now at 0.9%. Operating expenses traditionally increase about 4 to 5% each year. Paratransit is our most expensive service and is a growing demand. As we look at operating grants in the future, regional mobility operating grants are applicable for expansion or new services, and they can be supported by the state for up to 4 years. After 4 years, the state expects those to transition either to a local support or they may be pursued through the consolidated grant process, depending on the nature of their operation. Consolidated grant operations, which is where our county connectors are funded through today, the state introduced a sliding scale this year, in 2017, that starts with a 15% local match, and each biennium will increase 5% until we hit a 50% match. So we can expect in the 2019 biennium that we would pay a 20% local match, for example. Advertising, well, we've talked to a couple of local agencies about advertising. The truth of the matter is, regardless of what the final outcome of an advertising policy, it's unlikely to yield any significant incomes. We've looked at agencies such as Whatcom, for example, and they're generating probably around $75,000 annually for their advertising campaign. I would not put them on a scale that we would likely represent the same amount of money. Obviously they have a little more exposure with the city of Bellingham, the I-5 corridor, et cetera. But that also is reflected in 2015 as we released an RFP for advertising. We did not receive a response from an interested agency. Uncertainty of future revenues. Again, no magic here. Risk of sales tax decrease during a recession. For example, I think we've looked and I've shared with each of you previously that the sales tax from 2007, which was kind of the peak before the recession, to 2010, which seemed to be the bottom of the valley for sales tax revenue in Island County, that decrease was about 25% over 3 years, about an 8% a year sales tax decrease. So just a historical reference, if I had a crystal ball and could tell you what the next recession or what the impact would be, that would make planning a whole lot simpler on our part, but I don't have that. That has not been afforded as a resource yet. Federal formula and rural funding.
Working on that.
Yeah. If I can come up with that algorithm, I think I may have a future outside of Island Transit. Federal formula and rural funding. I only offer as a comment on, based on the certainly the political environment that we're in today, both at the federal level. I just don't know what the budgets for the DOT and FTA are. I don't know that we're at risk, but certainly you've heard the discussion about the administration asking for reductions in DOT and FTA funding. So, again, there's nothing that's been identified. Congress continues to support MAP 21 and the FAST Act correction. And so, we don't have any immediate risk. I just pointed out it's just an uncertainty with the future of the federal level. So, competitive operating and capital grant funding. Those are you can look historically at Island Transit and many other agencies across the nation and across the state. They kind of come based on opportunity. So this last grant cycle, Island Transit did exceptionally well. With the exception of one vehicle grant, we were awarded every grant that we asked for. You can look at other times in the past, and that has not always been the case. So again, no magic here, just trying to point out the fact that it is a competitive nature for grants, and it really depends on opportunity. This last cycle, I think there was very good opportunity for all of us, and certainly the staff did a great job of putting competitive packages together for that grant cycle. So options to consider. Admittedly, I have simplified these options. There would be some, to be fair, is there another option? There is continuing a fare-free model, which is currently what we operate today. The second option is to establish a fiscally sustainable fare structure and model. I chose those words carefully because fiscally sustainable is important to me as we plan towards the future. As I say, I've kind of simplified this a little bit in that I have eliminated some other options. In doing that, some options I've eliminated. The ORCA program, for example. The cost of overhead in the system itself implemented on a scale for Island Transit does not make it fiscally sustainable. We would pay more for the service than we would ever generate fares, so therefore I'm not going to offer you an option of of looking at installing electronic systems and the ORCA overhead and staffing required. So, I'll spend a little bit of time on the fare-free model. It is what we have operated, for the last 30 years, coming up in December 1st. It is the status quo. Okay, we know what those risks are. There is some grant or legislative risk, and we've talked a little bit about that with the appropriation from 2015-17. And you continue to hear discussions, from various representatives or, talking about local match. What's an appropriate local match, whether that's through the state grant, or through state sales tax collected to support transit, or fares for that transit district. Another interesting discussion as we've come across some of, doing some of the research is regional transit partnerships. Fares don't enable regional transit partnerships, but they are kind of a discussion point. Case in point, two of our neighboring agencies do have a partnership with one of their routes between Bellingham and Everett, and they're able to work together because they have very similar fare structures and sharing some of those operations to make it a more direct and convenient route for passengers. If we were to look at something similar for a county package, there really isn't an interest right now from our neighboring agency, SCAT, because they're certainly not going to come into Oak Harbor to pick up Island Transit residents that are fare-free. So there's a little bit of doesn't stop any regional partnerships, but it certainly hinders any discussion of partnering on an operational level for those. So just a minor point, again, doesn't change necessarily how we operate, but it could prevent a future transit partnership. On the benefit side, it is certainly the most equitable for all riders, regardless of level of income. Everyone has access to transportation and ride it with the same impact to their finances. It is the most efficient boarding process. We will board folks certainly quicker and more expeditiously without charging a fare. And on the staff side of the equation, certainly there's a lower administrative and also functions. So everything from maintenance functions to accounting, reconciling, financial management, etc. There's a number of things that we don't do today that, should we charge a fare, we would have to increase staff requirements to be able to support those. Looking at a fiscally stable fare structure, again, just building on some models, we've had a couple of discussions in the past. One of those is, we're going to keep again, looking at a fiscally sustainable model. We'll keep a system that makes sense to us. So if you look at what we currently have on the 412 today, it is the vendor is called Diamond Farebox, but it's a simple cash mechanical system that is installed in the bus, and it does require operator input only, in that as the rider enters money, the operator will be allowed to interacts with it to allow the money to drop into a vault at the bottom. It doesn't have any electronics other than a light, and it doesn't require any connectivity in a kind of complex bus installation. So for our perspective, for our system and the way we operate, it's certainly the simplest and most cost-effective if you're going to implement a fare on a cash basis. We've also had discussions in the past about, what about some of our younger riders, and whether they're millennials or folks that just don't travel with cash and would like another option. There is a vendor that is providing a service to a couple of agencies currently in Washington. They're providing to Clallam and Grace Harbor. They're a system called Token Transit. It is a smartphone application that allows the rider to interact with this vendor through an application and pay for a bus fare. Whether that's, this company will match a fare structure of the agency, regardless of what that is. So whether that's a daily, monthly pass, individual fare route, reduced fare structures, etc. They can mirror whatever the local agency's fare structure is. Their interaction is, so that way the user gets to pay with a credit card, debit card, etc. No real interaction directly with the agency in purchasing or use of that bus pass. The phone itself becomes the bus pass. The operator will get an opportunity to interact and verify that the bus pass is in fact accurate and valid. And I think I've shown you what that might look like on the phone in the past. And then Token Transit basically charges 10% pass-through. So their collection of whatever fare is generated, they would just 10% of that and then return the rest of it to, in our case, to the transit agency on transit. That would be deposited directly in our bank account. They would also provide some, provide information on who purchased, where they purchased, and used it. So not quite ridership numbers in the way that we operate, but a reconciling of where and when folks have purchased passes. There is no subscription or ongoing fee for Token Transit, so it's literally if no one uses it, there's no impact to Iron Transit. If everyone purchased it, they would collect 10% of every fare.
Have you heard how it's working in those two counties?
Both of those just started about 2 months ago, so I haven't heard any complaints. And again, it's we've also talked to Skagit last week, and they're interested in looking at this as well, mostly on a partnership level for looking at regional fares.
Are they monthly passes, not single trip?
They'll mirror whatever you have, so they can do both. So the monthly pass and the way the pass system without delving too much into Token Transit itself, the way theirs works is it provides you a pass on the phone, and it's either if it's a single use, it expires, I think it's 20 or 30 minutes after the single use and it disappears. For a month, it counts down either by the calendar month or by the 30-day rolling cycle where you set.
So it's timed on the phone, not?
Right. And not, I should say, timed on the user's account. So if you so you can't swap that. You can't give that bus pass to someone else.
But the driver doesn't have to do anything. Correct. Just verify that it's valid on the phone.
Okay, so a model fare policy, I only offer this up here for kind of setting the stage in a discussion of what fares would generate. So as I looked at model fare policies, I looked at Skagit, Jefferson, Whatcom in particular, as our immediate neighbors. I didn't consider community transit because they're part of ORCA, and there's some fare capping policies that apply for ORCA. So, an individual ride for community transit, for example, is $275. But when you use the ORCA system and fare capping, it doesn't come out to $275 for each individual bus that you use. So, for that purpose, I didn't consider, for example, establishing a $275 fare for Island Transit. As I looked at as agencies, the one that I thought most closely resembled our operating environment was Whatcom. For a couple reasons. They have the city of Bellingham, so some city structured routes. They have connectors on the I-5 corridor that go down to Skagit Station, and they also have rural routes that feed the outlying systems of Whatcom County. So for the most part, they're in the city and rural routes, their fare is a $1 fare. They do have a 50-cent reduced fare for youth, elderly, and college students. And they do have a day and monthly pass. So for the day, if you wanted to pay double the regular fare, you could ride buses all day long. And similarly, it's reduced for those same groups. Those will be set in the fare policy to be determined in the future if we wanted to establish those. Again, this is a model just to kind of reflect what costing would look like. And then they have regular month, a regular fare for a month, $25 pass within the city, and then a reduced price as well. Connectors, they essentially double the price. So once you're establishing leaving the county, looking at a $2 regular fare. And the reason I kind of modeled Whatcom is what they do have one of their routes that, much like our 411W, where we have ridership that doesn't exit the county. But they get on at Oak Harbor and, Harbor Station and get off somewhere before they exit the county. To kind of a zone model in that, it's $1 if you're in county, $2 if you're going to leave the county. And then similar prices to reflect for day or monthly passes. Paratransit, kind of looked at the same as well. Looked at regular fare for paratransit and then a monthly fare. Not to say these are set in stone. Again, these are just kind of represent what's already out there in a neighboring agency to give me an idea of what we would generate in revenues.
Okay, can I ask a question?
Sure.
So I'm trying to understand how you would move between, for instance, the city route and the connector route if you had an app. I mean, if you were just dropping quarters into the box, you would just pay twice, but would you have to pay, would you have a monthly fare that would just get charged twice for the connectors as a double cost, or how does that, I'm sorry, I'm just stuck on how that might work.
Yeah, so we would have to set up an individual pass that would be different than county connector for the city routes. And so the operator would be able to distinguish, is it a monthly pass for the city or for a county connector? A county connector monthly pass would let you ride all of the system routes, not just the county connectors. The city or local monthly pass would only be eligible for local routes or city routes.
Okay.
And then would you have transfers going from, let's say, a connector zone to a express route? Does that make sense? If you're going, if you're circulating around the area of Langley, but then you want to, let's say, go north on the express,
Right.
get a transfer pass from the driver.
The way this policy is set up, it doesn't, you don't really need a transfer, because essentially, for double the cost, you can pay for a day pass,
Okay.
which would allow you to ride any of the routes across the system. You know, otherwise, it's paying for an individual fare for each time you get on the bus.
Do you want any suggestions or discussion on this, or wait till you get to the end?
Certainly discussions are welcome, and again, you know, my only caveat is I'm not looking for this to be the fare policy. I just built this as a model if we costed it and what it would likely return in revenue. So if we were going to establish a fare policy, we need to kind of sit down as a board and talk about what's the whole fare structure going to look like, and allow everyone to kind of, you know, put their flavor on it.
Gotcha, so we'll wait till that, get to that point. Okay.
And my thoughts were we could possibly have a workshop to consolidate our thoughts in more detail.
Well, I mean, I'm interested in just, if you have ideas that we could all be thinking about over time, I would want to wait too long for us to get them all out on the table, so.
It's up to you guys.
It's up to us, so we'll go forward. We'll continue with this presentation, and then we'll have that discussion.
All right, so on a fare implementation, here are the direct expenses. Again, looking at that diamond fare box, we know what that is. It's about $1,400 a box per bus. You know, so for a total cost of about $84,000. To be frank, it's a little bit less than that, in that you know, we've already got it installed on a few of the buses. So $84,000 would be included on all 60 vehicles that we currently have. Fare box installation. You know, looking at you know, our current maintenance practices, preventive maintenance and corrective maintenance. You know, Ken and his department have got their hands full. You know, so while we could ask the maintenance department to dedicate time and resources to doing this, it would be at the expense of our current you know, maintenance. So at this point, you know, based on the recommendations from maintenance, you know, we'd likely look at contracting this individual project out to an outside provider. We have gotten one quote from a dealer that you know, detail what it would cost them to put it in the vehicles. To be fair, that quote was you know, during kind of normal working hours. We would probably modify that to look at you know, doing those services when we don't have the buses in service, so that doesn't impact our operations while we're doing that. So in saying that, you know, it's less than 30,000. We know what the dealer's estimate is. There's still some materials, you know, fare box pole, etc., things that would have to be included in that, but less than $30,000. Similarly for the facility, you know, much like we did over at Camino, we would need, you know, coin counters, bill counters, you know, safe vault. We'd have to modify either the facility here or put an add-on vault, like similar to what Skagit has done. So those are costs as well that would range between $30,000 and $45,000. For the purposes of this, I've only assumed the $45,000, the most expensive costs. And then you look at individual costs below that, daily and monthly pass costs, you know, armored service, car costs, and you know, nothing on the installation. But as you look at training, we would need to spend some time training our staff and operators on how to operate in a fair environment. We are doing that on the 412, but again, that's a very small percentage of our service today. Personnel. We looked at customer service in particular. Right now we have a part-time position that provides dedicated customer service from 8 to noon. I would propose expanding that to a full-time position, you know, from 8 to 4. That cost on there is the cost to change that position to a full-time position. So in total, that comes to, just about $188,000, as a one-time cost to install, again, just that cash fare box system. Token transit, as we talked about that a little bit ago, that electronic application for the phone, there is no cost for that. It's only a cost, based on the 10% that would be collected if a fare was collected through staff. Ongoing costs is, after installation, you're looking at still, now we're talking about daily or monthly pass costs. There's materials associated with that ongoing through the year. Those are based on estimates that we've collected in the past, as well as armored car service and support handling and money to and from facilities. Again, the recurring cost for transitioning that position to a full-time position, and then so again, a direct cost of about $50,000 a year. Okay, so kind of give you some numbers on costs. If we look at our 2016 ridership, case studies will tell you that when you implement a fare that you can expect to lose 30% of your ridership for 3 to 5 years. So that number was 683,671 riders in 2016. If you were to implement a fare across the system, you would expect that to drop by 30% to 478,507. That number's what I wanted to use for any kind of model comparison or cost or revenue generation. Looking at our partner agencies with that similar fare structure, they are generating about 53 to 55 cents for every rider that they're collecting across the system, and that reflects kind of the gamut of fares collected, everything from reduced fare, regular fare, monthly fares, student passes, etc. So, kind of, again, being a little bit on the conservative side, if we only collected 50 cents, per rider on that 478,000, it comes out to about 239,000 per year. If you looked at what that ridership might be in 3 to 5 years, assuming it returns, which is what most of the case studies indicate, is that 3 to 5 years after a fare is implemented, most of the riders will return to the system. That ranges. So that would the upper limit would range to about 341,000. Again, just a refresher, we talked about 49,922 as kind of the direct cost each year. There's a little bit of an increase each year, certainly with wage and benefit increases and things over time. But just for simple math purposes, right now about $50,000 a year. If you look at return on investment for initial capital costs, again about $188,000. If we're collecting $239,000 per year, we can estimate that a little less than a year you're going to recover your initial investment on that, on the installation of the fare boxes. Ongoing, the fare net surplus, the fare collection minus the recurring costs. So we're looking at between $189,000 to $291,000, based on 2016 ridership, and after you break even on the return on investment. So to be fair, there are some indirect costs as well. There are increased administrative, accounting, and maintenance workload that result in indirect costs. Those indirect costs are not numbers you can throw on the budget because we're already paying for those positions in those times. So we're not talking about additional people, additional. If we did have additional staffing increases, those would be directly included. So risks of establishing a fare policy. We've talked about a few of these. Loss of ridership. We know that in case studies across the nation, that's about a 30% anticipated loss for 3 to 5 years. It will increase our boarding times. There's an impact on schedules as well. We'll have to get some of our more robust and busier ridership times. Those are things that we have to look at, and ultimately, down the road, would that change our schedules to compensate for the fact that we do have an increase in boarding times. So those are things that we have to consider moving forward. And as we said, there's additional expenses for materials and labor supporting the fare system. And to be fair, there is a little bit of grant risk associated with lower ridership. Not so much for the fixed route ridership. We don't receive funding as a direct result of any fixed route ridership number. But we do receive funding for our special needs grant based on ridership. So I think Commissioner Hamel pointed it out at the last